like records.
Oh,
And before that, it used to be the county jail.
Nice.
As far as I'm
be careful. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So the building is in its original
Shell.
Yes.
Kuriwala.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start off with a little short kirtan. We've already had kirtan, but kirtan is our life and soul. So, yeah, a few minutes of kirtan. Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Rama Shupada Paramahamsa Hari Vrajacharya Stotra Satta Sri Samadhi Divine Grace Narada Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Skandiviti Founder Sharya Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Shri Dwarka Dhama Ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Shri Navadip Madhava Dhama Ki Shri Mayapur Chandradev Mandir Ki Gangamai Jamunamai Ki Tulsi Vibhakti Devi Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Ramparaj Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Gurnitai Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai Shri Krishna Balarama Ki Jai Shri Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Sri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanand. All glories to the assembled devotees. To gloire où Deva's assemblée. To gloire où Deva's assemblée. All glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada Ki. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Takshurindalitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Sarabhyai Namaha
Om Surabhyai Namaha
Om Sarabhyai Namaha
Om Surabhyai Namaha
Om Sarabhyai Namaha
Om Surabhyai Namaha
Mukam karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim yatkripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam yatkripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome everyone to this evening program, and want to thank Krishna Lila Prabhu for arranging this and for giving me an opportunity to be with all of you. I want to thank Mother Lakshmani, Mataji. You've been here a while, I think, huh? Jagdish was my first GBC. Yeah. Fond memories of going back a few years here. Quite a few years. Quite a few years, yeah. I met him not last time I was here, actually.
It was my first GBC too.
Yeah. Yes. We have something in common. Yeah. So, do you have the Bhagavatam here by chance? There's a very interesting short report. Otherwise, I'll bring it up here actually. Nowadays, it's.
I have it across the street, but not worth it.
No, it's okay. Yeah. No, I'll just bring it up. There's a very. I discovered this purport. You know, if we read Prabhupada's books occasionally, and more so, if we read them more regularly, we discover, we find out all kinds of things that we've never seen before. Jewels, actually, gems, all kinds of instructions and explanations, information that Prabhupada gives throughout his different purports, especially in the Bhagavatam. Of course, it's also there in the Bhagavad Gita. And because in the last few years, quite a few years, I've been kind of concentrating on one of your favorite topics, education. Yeah. Education is key, is one of the keys. Actually, we have many keys. But one of the important keys for unlocking, so to speak, what is Vedic culture. And I spoke about this, but very briefly yesterday when I was asking, what do we think about generally as devotees when we refer to Vedic education? And of course, the answer was and will be Gurukul, isn't it? Gurukul is the standard traditional system of education. In this purport that I will bring up right now, it's a verse. It's in the 10th canto. You can make a mental note, but I don't have access to internet here. Somebody who has can, you just get 10, 11, 37 and give it to me. 10, 11, 37. The title of the chapter is Krishna's daily activities. And can I have it?
Wi-Fi?
Oh, okay. He gave me a connection. Right. Well, if you have it. Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah, right. And who attended Bhagavatam class this morning? Okay. For those especially who did not attend Bhagavatam class, here's a second Bhagavatam class tonight. At least a purport of one verse, very important verse. So this is text number 37, and I'll just read the translation purport because it's very directly connected with the topic that we spoke about yesterday, and that was, you were mentioning a few things in connection with one ashram, in connection with simple living, in connection with what is more natural, in connection with the Vedic culture, etc. So here it is. I'll just give a little background to this verse. Where does Krishna go immediately after leaving Mathura? Where does Vasudeva?
Vrindavan.
No. Dwarka. Hey, no. Huh? Gurukul. My God. He's just born. He doesn't go to Gurukul. He can't walk. He can't even crawl. He goes to Gokul. He goes to Gokula, which is a section of Vrindavan. Not completely off track, but Gokula. And what happens is that after so many things, Kamsa starts sending all kinds of bad people, demons, and then there's a whole, Kartik, Damodar Lila takes place, and we all know about Damodar Lila. And with that particular pastime, soon after that pastime, Nanda Maharaj calls a meeting, and he explains to everyone, there's too many bad omens, there's too many wrong things happening, so we're going to move So that's all described in the Bhagavatam. So they move from Gokula, they go to Vrindavan, right? So this verse is telling that, okay, Krishna and Balaram, after moving in Vrindavan, they're still infants, then they slowly grow up, and then this verse is telling, okay, what happens when they grow up. This is especially important for those who are around that age. We have a few boys here. And parents also need to hear this very attentively. It's a powerful purport, short and sweet, as they say. So here we go, translation to 37. In this way, Krishna and Balaram, acting like small boys and talking in half-broken language, they're growing up, gave transcendental pleasure to all the inhabitants of Braja. In due course of time, they became old enough to take care of the calves. So they would be approximately, it doesn't mention here, maybe 6 or 7 years of age, 6, 7, maximum 8. Purport. As soon as Krishna and Balaram were a little grown up, they were meant for taking care of the calves. Calves are small cows. What you say, right? Although born of a very well-to-do family, they still had to take care of the calves. And this is the next sentence here. In 6 words, this was the system of education. The daily activity or activities of Krishna and Balaram, going every day with all of their friends, hundreds, if not thousands of friends, and thousands of calves. This was the system of education. I continue. Those who were not born in a Brahmana family or in Brahmana families were not meant for academic education. Krishna and Balaram in Vrindavan are not connected with Brahmana family, they're connected with Vaishya family, isn't it? So Prabhupada is telling here, those who are not born in Brahmana families were not meant for academic education. The Brahmanas were trained in a literary academic education. The Kshatriyas were trained to take care of the state, and the Vaishyas learned how to cultivate the land and take care of the cows and calves. Now the next few sentences are very important for parents. Are you ready?
Yeah.
There was no need to waste time going to school to be falsely educated and later increase the numbers of the unemployed. I don't think I have to read that again. Krishna and Balaram taught us by their personal behavior. Krishna took care of the cows and played on his flute. And Balaram took care of agricultural activities with a plow in his hand. Krishna and Balaram are acharyas. They are the acharyas. Actually, one time, one disciple was telling Prabhupada, you're the acharya for farming. Prabhupada, no, not me. It's Krishna and Balaram. They are the acharyas. Because Balaram, with his plow, as mentioned by Srila Prabhupada, he looks after agriculture. And Krishna, how many here know how to play the flute? No, just scratching your flute playing, anyone? Hey, very good. You're meant to be a cowherd boy. Yeah. Flute play. Krishna looks after the cows especially by playing his flute. Why? Because cows love sound. You know that? cows are attracted to nice sound vibration, especially the flute, and especially when Krishna plays the flute. Yeah, right. I mean, the whole of Vrindavan comes to a halt, to a still. Everyone just is totally wrapped. Even it says that the Jamuna stops to flow. That's how heavy. The Jamuna stops to flow to hear the transcendental sound vibration of Krishna's flute. So, although a very short purport and short description, it should give us a little idea, maybe more than a little idea, of what is actually meant to be the more natural, simple way of living. Because Vrindavan, I was mentioning yesterday during the lecture, is not only attractive because Krishna and all the residents of Vrindavan are engaged in activities of devotional service. Everyone is thinking about Krishna. Everyone is trying to please Krishna. Everyone is chanting the glories of Krishna. But Vrindavan is also important because the Vedic sciences, the Vedic material sciences that actually make up a community, that make up a culture, that helps us to meet our different material necessities of life, namely agriculture and cow protection. That's what the whole Vrindavan life is all about. Sometimes when I or others speak on the subject matter of villages, people will say, but Maharaj, Dwarka was there, Hastinapur, cities were there. Yes, cities were there, but Vedic cities were there, and not so many. Not so many people. A small, relatively small percentage of the population lived in the cities, because cities have a particular role where generally kings would reside in the capital or in larger metropolitan places to kind of organize, to receive taxes, etc., like that. It was never meant to be, as unfortunately we have concocted in modern day society because of being disconnected with this knowledge, being disconnected with the Vedic culture. Cities were never meant to be where the majority of people live. This is one, it will go down in history. One of the, we could say, biggest mistakes of modern day society, of modern day leaders, thinking, not really thinking actually, speculating that people will be better off, it will be easier to, for the people in general, to be in cities. Of course, that's a whole very big topic in itself. And Srila Prabhupada wanted us as devotees to understand that this present day direction in which society has been going for since the last century, actually it began at a historical moment in recent history that is called the Industrial Revolution and the French Revolution. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada had great hopes and expectations that this society and that the members of this society, by cultivating this knowledge from Bhagavad Gita, from Bhagavatam, would be able to, after assimilating, after understanding that this is actually how we should be living. And then the challenge for us, of course, is to show by example this lifestyle which we can, again, we discussed but very briefly yesterday, we can begin to do wherever we are, at least on some scale or other. It's very interesting how there are some, Krishna arranges everything, of course, but Krishna wants this to happen, isn't it? Krishna, why does Krishna come? Dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya saduskritam. He comes, one of the purposes for his advent is to help re-establish the principles of dharma. And therefore, those who are devotees are meant to understand, okay, what are those principles of dharma? What is the mission of the Lord? And what role can I play in helping the Lord re-establish dharma? Isn't it? Actually, this morning or last night, Surendra Gopal Prabhu, who was with us, we just happened to be talking a little bit like this, and we talked about, made reference to, how the whole world, 4 years ago with COVID, the whole world became like turned upside down practically. Everyone was panicking, everyone was going for vaccines, etc., etc. And of course, when we study a little bit about Vedic culture, especially village culture and cows, we know something about how cows, being with cows, the many benefits, many immediate benefits that are there. But he pointed out something I was not aware of. He was telling that when that whole, thing blew up, and it happened very quickly. I mean, I was, at that time I was finishing, I was doing a survey as part of a research, doctoral research I was doing, visiting 108 villages in India. And I just finished visiting my last village, which was in South Karnataka, Udupi, where we have a farm. So, I mean, it was, I take it as Krishna's arrangement. 2 days after we finished that program, we took pictures with the mayor, this is our last program. Then the news hit in India and all over the world that, COVID is here and we have to take precaution, etc., etc. Well, I just went to the farm and I stayed with the cows. So what Surendra Prabhu was telling was that in India, and I was not aware of this, that people by the thousands, right? Many by thousands, but in many places, especially Gujarat and other places, they took shelter in Goshalas. And there were so many people wanting to go and take shelter in the Goshala that they had to say, okay, we don't have more space. Why they want to take shelter in the Goshala? Because by instinct, it's part of the culture. If we're with cows, we're safe. Yeah, because it used to be, may still be also, when, I think Prabhupada makes reference to that, when ladies, it's not maybe that long back, would be giving birth, maybe before hospitals were there, they would give birth in a Goshala, or close to cows. Because cow dung is pure, and cows are peaceful. And that made me think sometime back how, because we think about, we're in a Christian world still. Lord Jesus was born in that, what is it?
A manger?
Yeah, where the cows are. So we think, Krishna's so poor, he's born. But that was, I'm sure it was a standard there at that time. I didn't do any research on it, but it just coincides with what is the practice in India, those who are following the Vedic culture. So, Srila Prabhupada was very consistent, very, very consistent. Way back, it goes back to the days, now connect with Gita Nagari, when Prabhupada wrote his essay on Gita Nagari. Actually, he wrote it, he published it in 1956. But the same message that Prabhupada conveyed in that essay of 1956, I'm not sure if you're aware, in 1949, a very important letter that Prabhupada wrote, and referring to some of the same principles that he spoke about in his essay of Gita Nagari. Gita Nagari, for those who may not know, is not a very long essay, but a very important one, where Prabhupada chalks out how we should live together in a place where the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, Nagari means a place, a village, where we live as a community, and that's the basic definition of Vedic village, Vedic village. In the last so many decades, we have gone away from that model. We've gone away from the cows, we've gone away from the land, and the end result is the whole planet and those living on the planet are in big trouble in so many different ways, health-wise, economic-wise, in terms of social interaction, in terms of education, because we've deviated actually in a major way, in terms of, that's a whole science, isn't it? In other words, whatever we need on a daily basis, whether it's clothing, shelter, medicine, or food, these are the four basic necessities of life that we have every day. The Vedic culture teaches us that all of this, if you simply take the time to learn it, is available from Mother Bhumi, from the land. Sarva Kama Dugamahi. In the Bhagavatam, that verse is explaining all of our necessities of life are met from the land. But nowadays, we're taught differently. All of your necessities of life are from this supermarket, or that store, or whatever. We have become disconnected, isn't it? And most of us, we may not realize, are wearing cloth because the second largest industry, the second largest polluting industry in the world is textile. The first is petroleum. I mean, so many products are there. And since the last century, we've totally exploited actually the resources on the planet to such an extent that it is researched, it is established that we have our modern civilization to keep up with, the kind of standard that we have built up. We have already used up in the last 30 years approximately more than 30% of the natural resources on the planet. And somebody pointed out that we have only one planet, which is true. Maybe that's why they're looking for other planets. I don't know. They're spending huge amounts of money, millions, if not billions, trying to go to some other planet while they can't even look after this planet properly. So that is all due to a lack of proper understanding. It's due to a lack of knowledge, which we find especially in the Vedic literatures. So this is where, the devotees of the Lord, the more we know about the mission of the Lord, then we can begin to take steps to kind of rectify the present situation, the various, actually, they're on a global scale, global crises that have been created due to our not knowing or not following these instructions. So it actually does begin with education and training. And more recently, at least more recently, I've come a little bit more in contact with a few more devotees. Some of them first generation, some of them second and third generation, who are beginning to understand how major changes, Prabhupada told us, one of the major changes that we need to introduce is to re-establish the system, the perfect system. As devotees, we should know that there is something like perfect knowledge, otherwise we would not be here. Bhagavad Gita is perfect knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, in presenting this perfect knowledge, Krishna has given us perfect systems. Otherwise, we would not call chapter 11 of the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam the perfect society for social divisions, or chapter 12, the perfect society for spiritual divisions, isn't it? The Varnas. We are not, I would say we're not yet convinced. We're not yet convinced as devotees that system that we call Varna and Ashrama is a perfect system. Of course, we can understand that because it has been mishandled, it has been exploited for a very long time, and therefore, naturally, people are. I'll share in the first canto, 9th chapter. You can look it up. 1:9:26. You're good at it. Continue. 1:9:26, the first instruction that Grandfather Bhishmadev gives to Yudhisthira Maharaj. Grandfather Bhishmadev is on a bed of arrows, not just one arrow, a bed of arrows, right? We get stung by a bee or a mosquito and we panic. He's on a bed of arrows and he's totally conscious. He's so conscious that he speaks for days and days. Philosophy. He's the main speaker to Yudhisthira Maharaj, who's about to become the emperor of the world. And what's the very first instruction he gives him?
How much you have suffered.
Huh?
You have suffered so much even though you walked on the virtuous life.
Yes, but there's something specific. Thank you. Here it is. And too slow.
I just felt
No problem. 1:9:26. Yeah. I'll read a portion of the first of the text, but I want to read the first sentence of the purport, that also was a revelation to me not that long ago. So here's the translation to the text. At Maharaja Yudhishthira's inquiry, Bhishmadev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Means he's beginning to talk about Varna and Ashram. And what does Prabhupada say in the purport? I'll just read the first sentence because that's significant. The conception of 4 castes and 4 orders of life as planned by the Lord himself, Bhagavad Gita 4:13, Chaturvarna Maya system. And listen carefully. That system is to accelerate transcendental qualities of the individual person so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identity and thus act accordingly to get free from material bondage or conditional life. Prabhupada uses the word to accelerate. I mean, we all want to accelerate becoming devotees, isn't it? Prabhupada is telling us the way to accelerate the process of advancing in Krishna consciousness, the process of developing transcendental qualities by following Krishna's system. It's logical, isn't it? Krishna has created everything. Aham sarvasya prabhavu matas sarvam prabhartate iti matva bhajante man buddha bhava samadvitaha. I'm the origin of the material creation, spiritual creation. Those who are intelligent will understand and follow. So, in other words, as devotees, when we take up or speak on the subject of dharma, we cannot neglect Krishna's creation in terms of the system he has created and given us to facilitate our advancement in spiritual life. There's so many instructions actually in the Bhagavatam. All activities that we are meant to perform are actually meant for that purpose, for helping us to advance in spiritual life. Of course, in modern day society, because that whole dimension of dharma is absent. So therefore, people perform material activities for material gain, basically, falsely thinking that we can be happy in this way. But we know from Bhagavatam, and from Bhagavad Gita, the only way to be happy, to be fully happy, to be always happy, is to be in line, both materially and spiritually, with Krishna's plan, isn't it? So it's a major task, a major challenge for all of us, but we should know, it's like, to go back to the spiritual world is also not so easy. It's practically impossible. I mean, actually, it is impossible on our own. No. That's why we need the mercy of Krishna. That's why we need the mercy of Krishna's devotees. And that mercy of Krishna and Krishna's devotees comes when we position ourselves, agree to hear and follow and endeavor, at least make that sincere effort to put into practice Krishna's instructions. So this is one of our, Srila Prabhupada, 2 weeks before leaving the planet in Vrindavan, on his bed in Vrindavan, could not move. That's actually, video is there. And he's reminding all of us. Prabhupada is telling, I'll just paraphrase, Prabhupada, as we know, is always very concerned about the state of affairs in the world and how in Kali Yuga especially, people are just overcome, especially by the two lower modes of material nature, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So Prabhupada is explaining, he's very weak, he can't move, he can hardly speak. But even in that, if you listen to that short script, that short portion where Prabhupada speaks, as he does in all of his classes, even at that point, like 2 weeks after, basically he's leaving his body, he puts emphasis on certain words, and basically he explains that yes, the unfortunate condition in modern day society is that people are heavily under the influence of rajas and tamas, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And then he says, therefore, in order to change that, people should be, and he uses the word brought, people should be brought to the mode of goodness by establishing Varnashrama. Varnashrama system, this material system, which includes education, which includes economics, which includes the basic sciences that make up a society, largely unknown today actually in the world. Largely unknown because we haven't followed one of the important instructions given to us by Srila Prabhupada to establish our national colleges where these topics and subjects are meant to be taught. It is there in the small village of Vrindavan, and it was there until not so long ago. Even it is there now in India, in some villages, although the heavy influence of modern society is there. Villages are becoming urbanized more and more, but you can still find some villages, and more so before the British came, before the Industrial Revolution took place 200 years ago. Villages in India were reflecting to a large extent how Krishna and Balaram. There's a book. It's part of the 64 Arts and Sciences. You may know about it already. If not, it's something you can include in your teachings. It's called Krishna Krida. Who knows about Krishna Krida? Who knows Sanskrit?
Yeah.
Krida.
Play.
Play, yes. So one of the 64 arts and sciences is dealing with the different playful activities of Krishna and Balaram 5,000 years ago. Because I Googled and did a little research, it was part of my research also, psychologists will recognize, and also educationalists, that by play, young children learn. You can learn so many things, and you can learn also to interact, social interaction. As a matter of fact, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur emphasizes how it's very important for young boys to interact with their peers, young girls as well, isn't it? In a natural setting, the more natural the setting is, the more natural the interaction is, then there's a growth will be taking place. One will be learning in so many ways. That's why Prabhupada makes that statement that this activity of going every day with the cows, or the calves rather, for Krishna and Balaram, this is Vedic education. So we think of education as as a building or as a classroom. Traditionally, education did not mean a building. But we need to understand, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, formal education, that means academic education, that is for Gurukula, that is mainly for Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. But the majority of the population, they're meant for non-formal education, which means learning different skills, apprenticeship, isn't it? And that is best done in a more natural environment. And that more natural environment is meant to reflect the activities that are taking place in a village like Vrindavan. Again, unless we clearly understand that Vedic culture is mainly and primarily an agrarian-based culture. And by agrarian-based culture, we mean also a cow-based culture. That's where the cows come in. Because without cows, forget about Vedic culture. Forget about sustainable economy. Because the definition of sustainable, simple, scientific economy is in the definition that we find in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishi Goraksha Vanija. That is the ideal sustainable economy. And that is meant to be the occupation for the vast majority of parents or householders, which Prabhupada explains, of course, as well in the 7th canto, beginning from chapter 11. A lot of this is presented in this book. Can you bring up the book? Speaking about Varnashram, I didn't bring it because it's a big book, but we have it. It's available digitally. Actually, all of you can receive this book. I'm giving a free copy to everyone. It's not that I'm giving, but it's available. One devotee has from America. Maybe you know him. Baninath. He was in Florida. What's his name? Yes. I don't know him. It's only recently because he's very much promoting this book, which he just a few years ago actually kind of like discovered, so to speak. So it means that Prabhupada wanted us, all of us, to hear what is in these literatures. I mean, Prabhupada's books in particular, and therefore we have a moral duty and responsibility to do that, and especially to try and understand, God, material world, right? Try to do something good here. Yeah, that's the book. It's you probably can't see it very much, but well, okay, that's the title here. It's a picture of Srila Prabhupada in Gitanagari in America. Gitanagari, one of the first communities that we established. So speaking about Varnashram is the title, which is available. I'll tell you in a few minutes. Yeah. So this still remains very much an unfulfilled mission of our founder Acharya, and it's something that we should be aware of, especially at this particular, I would say, junction. We're living in a very critical period in history. Have been for some time, and has and is becoming more critical. And therefore, Prabhupada wanted us to understand this aspect, this point, which is connected with self-sufficiency. Something that we can start at least on a small scale, wherever we are, by beginning to go on a small scale, by beginning to connect with Mother Nature in whatever way we can, also with Mother Cow, like that. If not directly, with some of the products from Mother Cow. So, where's your clock? Okay.
6:15, Maharaj.
Huh?
6:15.
6:15. Okay. So I don't know what your program is, but maybe a few minutes of questions or your comments, possibly. And want to round it up with a kirtan or something after?
Yes.
Also. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So 2 questions.
Let's start with one. Okay.
First one, what is it that you notice the difference between people who live in Varnashram farm settings and compared to people who live in the city? Like their
There
state
is
of
no
consciousness.
comparison. Well, I mean, it's a very general question. The idea is that whether they are devotees, are you talking about devotees or non-devotees? Devotees.
I guess in general.
In general. Well, definitely, let's talk about so-called non-devotees. I mean, as we understand, wearing tilak, etc. People in villages are generally more connected with nature. They're more peaceful. I mean, they may not be the case at present, but when society is properly functioning, when there is proper guidance in villages, people are more healthy, more conscious, more of much less in anxiety than people in cities, etc. The pace of life is different. Cities are man-made, modern-day cities in particular. whereas villages are more closer to nature. For devotees, well, it depends what devotees, because one can live in a city and cultivate nicely Krishna consciousness, but there are many challenges that will not be as present in villages. In other words, in the city, most of our devotees are actually living in cities. Most of our devotees are also having some kind of a job. They have to travel every day to work. They don't get so much of association with devotees, maybe once a week. Maybe once a week, not always. And very often, the majority of our children are sent to public school. So there's much less of association with devotees. And modern propaganda and media and the whole pressure is very taxing. I mean, devotees, householders have it. It's very, very difficult. Whereas in a village, if one is understanding what is meant to be, what is described in the Shastra in terms of making a living from the land, etc., like that, if one knows how to do that, one has to learn. Then it's what Shastra is recommending, that this is how we should actually be living. This is how we should, as householders, make a living. So definitely, I mean, we can, all of us, I believe, experience and understand, realize to some extent or other, how modern day cities are extremely dangerous. They are described as, what is it? Concrete jungles. Ugrikama, yeah, concrete jungles. It's more dangerous to live in today's concrete jungles than it is to live in ordinary jungle. And it's dangerous to live in ordinary jungle, where there are tigers and big snakes and whatnot. What Prabhupada is telling, Shastra is telling, it is even more dangerous to live in modern day cities, which are referred to as concrete jungles or Ugra Karma. So therefore, it's a major challenge, major area for all of us to kind of take up, and we have a lot of work to do in that respect. But it will become easier the more we are acquainted with what Srila Prabhupada is explaining, the more we understand it, and also the more we take measures to kind of prepare ourselves, regardless of where we are, whether we are in the city or in the country. Just to summarize, basically, it means that city life, our preaching is meant to be especially in the cities, and so cities, we can consider them as being the basis, preaching basis, whereas country or village should be our living basis. We can also preach, and we should also preach in the villages. It's a different world. And Prabhupada has explained, I think we've all experienced to some extent or other, how modern day cities are extremely artificial. Prabhupada actually said many statements. One of them is that modern day civilization, I'm sure some of you have heard this, modern day civilization is a doomed civilization. The word doomed is, if you understand what it means, is like a heavy word. Prabhupada said modern day cities will not continue. Because, why? Because it's artificial, it's not sustainable. Again, I'm just encouraging and urging also devotees to read what Srila Prabhupada has said in his book that I showed briefly, speaking about Varnashrama, is having basically 100% Prabhupada's main instructions, not all of them, but Prabhupada's main instructions on so many topics in relation to Varnashrama Dharma, whether it's cows, agriculture, education, economics, Varnashram college, etc. And we'll get to your second question if there's no other hand up. But you have to wait a few minutes. Yes.
Cows and land, they are very important.
And cell phones.
Knowledge.
Yes. Yeah.
Knowledge is yes. But
But
it's just mechanically having this will not resolve the issue, because in modern day we see that it is making them more aggressive because of the ownership, it's me, mine and all. So
yes.
intention has to be clear that, as you read it, the line of the verse in Bhagavatam is to accelerate. And then immediately clicked me the example of Raja Jayati. That's how direction he chose. Basically, he went to the forest and to stay with the cows and nature. So owning agriculture and cow is okay, good, but if it's mechanically achieved that goal,
Of course.
it's of no, it may make you the best butcher also.
Yes. So we should leave all things that are artificial, beginning with A. A. What is, anyway, we won't get into that. What begins with A and is artificial?
Automobile.
AI.
Artificial.
And yeah, I mean, the very word is, it says it all, right? Yeah. But no, the point you're making is very true, that we need to, our activities in terms with, in connection with cows and man, needs to be based on knowledge and experience, and that we get from Shastra and we get from from our Vaishnavacharyas. So nothing we should do mechanically, of course, yes. Therefore, training and education is necessary. Yes.
I'm actually the one who had her hands up.
Okay, Shibichi, go ahead.
I just, you talk about villages, and villages are more than farms. And I think that really needs to be understood. Even in the Jewish tradition, people live in villages, and they, even now, even in Toronto, they live and they only purchase from each other.
Yes,
They make the things, there's crafts, they make what they need.
yes,
They only buy from the people in their
Within.
village. They don't go to Amazon or whatever.
yeah,
And they provide everything they need within
community,
the community.
yes,
That's a village.
yes,
To
yes,
some extent. I mean, you can look at a village like Honeywater and, there's a different place, but you can,
yes.
so,
So farms are meant to be as a stepping stone towards it.
yeah, but unless we create, I've talked about this in many cases. I asked Bhakti once, what he thought would be necessary typically for how Varnashram to take off, and he said, we'll never be able to have Varnashram communities until we take over the government. So everybody has a different angle on it, but it seems like to some extent we all have to lift at the same time. That everything has to be there, because if something is not there, then immediately you go outside to get it, and it falls apart.
Yeah. It has to be a whole movement. It has to be a kind of a collective undertaking, and that's why Prabhupada had given that instruction that wherever we have a temple or project, this was in 1974, 51 years ago, wherever immediately, Prabhupada uses the word immediately, wherever we have a temple or a project, immediately we should establish Varnashram College to train our devotees gradually in the Vedic sciences, that will help us understand, okay, what do we need to do now, looking at where we are and what we have to face to make this happen. Yeah? And so therefore it's a major part of Prabhupada's mission. If
Yeah, do you have Maharaj like in your projects, like in Indonesia, in Mayapur, I heard you have a project that's going. Have you started doing something like this with having like a little college or like a center where you have that education being taught? Obviously, you have the farming component that's coming together, but can you give us some examples of some places that are doing that? Or?
well, there are a few communities where some educational practices are there. For example, in Hungary, I'm not sure, did anyone visit? Did you get a chance to visit?
I've been to.
Yeah, Krishna Valley. You know, I was mentioning yesterday, they've been awarded as the best self-sufficient community by European Council.
Yeah, the only thing is that the money for it comes from, or at least
Some of the money,
for
yes.
many years, the seed money came from people out on the street doing Sankirtan.
Yeah, it's difficult to find the perfect, complete thing, but there are communities who are making some good effort in that direction. Our project in Mayapur is in its early beginnings, but the whole idea is to actually establish both of these in terms of Gurukul, in keeping with what Prabhupada instructed in Gita Nagari, where Prabhupada says that we will not, in our Gurukul, Prabhupada gave the name, which we are also adopting, calling it Gita Pachala, right? Gita Pachala, which is like Gurukul. Prabhupada says we will not accept boys over the age of 7. And Prabhupada many times explained how Gurukul is meant for the young boys, whereas Varnashram College is for older boys. So admittedly, we don't have many models. We don't have that perfect model. And in one sense, we should not also expect to have a perfect model, although we should strive to have as close as possible to what is meant to be ideal. That should not deter us, I would say, from still endeavoring and striving in that direction, because it's the basis of what the Vedic culture is about. It's there in the Shastra, and it is especially being presented to us and explained to us, and we're being urged by personalities like our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada and previous Vaishnavacharyas as well. It's a major challenge, obviously, but there are attempts in different places being made, and I think that will, by Krishna's mercy, increase. What we're trying to do is simultaneously, our place is like a Varnashram resource center at this point. We have a structure for Gurukul, and we also plan to introduce Varnashram College. And it's really in its beginning or early stage at this point. I think what's important is we need to present, we need to convince and invite as many devotees as possible to hear what Prabhupada is explaining, so that we can begin to understand and be more convinced. And then if we make that effort, I'm sure Krishna will be helping us, according to our respective situations, how to proceed. It will naturally vary, but we need to grasp, we need to understand some of the basic components that make up an ideal civilization, ideal communities, and that is by developing what we see described in the Shastra and what we also see happening in villages in places like India. Yes.
Even, I can remember, and I wasn't around when the Bhagavad Gita Okay. Almost. I remember even in Toronto, for example, many, many little shops of people who are artisans.
Yeah.
Right, you know, the weapons that Arjuna and Ovan used, they didn't get them on Amazon, they got them from a smith,
Yes.
you know? So, there's skills that people can learn and,
Yeah.
you know, and exchange with others.
Yes. And that is meant to be presented and made available in a very systematic and orderly way. It's part of the first, of the 7 purposes of ISKCON, to present systematically the teachings of Krishna consciousness, because that is also part of the teachings of Krishna.
Knowledge, skills, and values.
And coming back to your second question, we didn't forget.
I should have asked this one first because it's more important. But as far as your experience in seeing different farm communities, how do they thrive the best as far as the structure of them? So would you see them strive best whether it's like one family takes up the charge of the farm and they facilitate the funds to get it going? Or do you find it better it runs under, say, a community basis and, there's a community pool, or under the helm of, say, okay, ISKCON fund for Goshala? What strategy to actually get a proper farm with cows going have you seen works the best?
Simple question. It will vary. ISKCON as a society has established communities. They are developing in different ways at different places. There are many factors involved. In the Shastra, there are prescriptions in terms of how actually villages, communities are especially meant to be organized by Kshatriyas. Now, when we don't have Kshatriyas, which is the case now, then it makes it like close to impossible. So one of the important components, I would say, for us as a society to become successful in establishing communities is to understand the role and position of Kshatriyas, number one. And secondly, to understand how the vast majority of such communities will not be under an institution, because by nature and definition, a village is self-sufficient. You see? And it is meant to be governed by those who are residing in that village. Naturally, Krishna needs to be in the center. And ISKCON as a society, like for example, it may not be the best example, we have Sharanagati. I belong to a village. I'm kind of happy and proud to belong to a village. I mean, I was not born in a village, but I became a villager, although I don't spend very much time in my village, of Sharanagati, right? So the system, you've been to Sharanagati, yeah. The system they have since many years is what we call cooperative. The land belongs to the cooperative, and people are shareholders, right? And in that community, it's all devotees, but there's only one plot that belongs to ISKCON. And all the devotees, so on that plot, which was donated actually by one of the devotees, that's where the temple is, that's where Gaur Nitai are, and the devotees come every Sunday and chant Hare Krishna and take prasadam and associate and whatnot. I mean, they associate during the week also, but maybe a little less, because the neighbor is quite far away. Yeah. So there are different models in villages, and probably many, if not most of the villages in India, people live quite close together, and the land is surrounding the village. But the point is that people are governed by individuals who have knowledge of, who have some Kshatriya type of Kshatriya ability is, or responsibility, is basically broken into three. One is to protect, both physically as well as in terms of the principle of dharma. One is to organize protection, administration, organization, and then welfare, to provide support in case of need for those who are the citizens or the residents. So it's a whole science. I mean, it takes years, and to explain or to summarize that in 2 minutes or even 10 minutes, it just does not do justice to the topic. It takes years of training. When the Pandavas finally went when they went to Gurukul, they went for many years. It takes 10 years, 12 years or more to get the kind of training needed to become an ideal Brahmana, to become an ideal leader or Kshatriya within society. So it will vary. There are different models, and we can learn about it more by beginning, as I mentioned, this particular book, and then there are other books as well. And actually, this devotee was, what's his name? Vanira. Yeah, I've never met him, but he was interviewed just a few days ago by one of our devotees about, how come he seems to be so interested in promoting Varnashram and whatnot. So he was giving a few references that I've not read yet in Mahabharata, where grandfather Bhishmadev explains in his discourse to Yudhishthira Maharaj that of the 4 Varnas, the Kshatriya Varna is the most important because it's meant to sustain and help and organize the other 3. And he quoted quite a few references in that respect. It's like, when you have a powerful king or president or prime minister, things can happen, either good or bad. Things happen. Mostly bad things happen nowadays because we don't have leaders who have the qualities that a Raja Rishi is meant to have. So we are meant to train Raja Rishis, isn't it? Yeah. Who wants to become a king? Not so
Quite a
easy.
few.
Huh?
Quite a few wants to be.
That's our disease, Well, of course, me. Yeah, right. So I'll just repeat what I said yesterday for those who possibly were not there at the lecture. I have here my magical card, which if you come in contact with this card, you will have access to this digital book. I mean, the book in digital form, speaking about Varnashram. Yeah, and many other references and videos and whatnot. So those who are not having it, who would like to have it, they can just come and see me after I think it's probably time to chant Hare Krishna and close 5 minutes. I don't see too many hands up. 5 minutes, we'll wrap it up with a short kirtan. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. Take out your instruments and clear your throats. And Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Krishna also. Hare Rama.